The Virtuoso specialization for Mesmer has one of the best synergies with the Celestial stats, and while I am not a fan of putting Celestial on everything, this is definitely one thing that I think you should. So let's just get into the build. I'll talk about the traits and the equipment, and then we'll go into some of the playstyle. So first of all, you have full Celestial gear, which you'll be taking the Rune of the Traveler. Traveler just gives you your movement speed and a bunch more stats. You could take Fireworks for a little bit more Fury uptime, but you should have plenty in an ideal situation. And this gives you a lot of condition duration as well, which is going to give you more damage. So then you've got a Scepter and Torch with the Sigil of Torment and the Sigil of Cleansing. The Torch is going to be useful for escaping because this build doesn't have too many escapes. It's mostly a 1v1 kind of like bruiser, kind of tanky build. So the Torch is nice for that. And the Phantasm is not bad as well. And then the Scepter is really good because it has a block on it, which will also do a decent amount of damage with the Torment and just pure power damage that it does. And the 3 skill on the Scepter is also really good. So the blocks are really important for the traits that we'll talk about later. But then you have the staff, which has cleansing energy on it. So you've got cleansing on both weapon sets, and then you've got energy on the staff, and you've got torment on the scepter because that's your main damaging weapon. There are a lot of synergies in the trait lines, and then you just take inspiration to give you a lot of sustain to survive long enough to get those synergies. So in inspiration, you have the restorative mantras. You just have one mantra, which is the mantra of resolve, which will give you a bit of cleansing, but it'll also heal you when you use it now. You could take the sympathetic visage or the medic's feedback if you feel like you need those, but generally the extra healing is nice. Then you're going to get restorative illusions, which will heal you and cleanse you whenever you shatter, and you're going to be shattering a lot. And this heals you quite a bit because you have many shatters that you're going to be using, and you get the extra healing from however many shatters you use. And you've got 5 blades, so it really scales up. And then finally you have illusionary inspiration, which will heal you whenever you summon an illusion. And when you're a virtuoso, that's whenever you stock a blade. So you're stocking a lot of blades on this build. And also with the heal skill, Signet of the Ether is the same effect. So you gain essentially 500 healing every time you stock a blade because of illusionary inspiration. And well, it's more like 600 if you have both of these triggering. And while the heal skill, it has an active, you generally want to use the passive because it gives you so much more healing over time. Then in illusions, you're going to be taking Shatterstorm because this is a hybrid build, so you still want to be using the F1 Shatter, which is a decent amount of power damage, and also condition damage because of the Maim the Disillusion trait, which gives torment on all of your shatters. And then finally you have Master of Fragmentation, which gives you increased crit chance on your F1, gives you cripple on your F2, gives you more AoE on your F3, and increases the duration of your F4, which is not too important. Then in Virtuoso, you're going to be taking all of the top trait line because this is mostly the PvP line. It's going to give you Aegis whenever you use a shatter, and it's going to give you quickness, fury, and regen whenever you block or dodge an attack, and it's also going to give you 3 blades whenever you block or dodge an attack. So 3 blades equals about 1,500 or more healing right there. So every 3 seconds you've got a ton of healing. You've also got regeneration, which is going to scale with the healing power you get from your celestial stats. And in general, this just has a ton of sustain. So the damage is going to be coming from the minor traits in illusions, where you've got the hybrid power and condition damage modifiers whenever you stock blades, which is creating a clone. And then you're also going to get more crit chance when you have fury. So you've got around like 60-ish crit chance. And then you're going to have even more because of the F1 is going to have the 25% crit chance there. And then you've also got increased ferocity based on your vitality. So there's just so much synergy. Also, vulnerability. You're going to be gaining vulnerability whenever you crit on your blades, and that increases power and condition damage. And those Selly builds really need might. There isn't a lot of might on this build, so the only thing that you really get might from is whenever you dodge from taking the food, which is the truffle meat stew. As a Virtuoso, you will no longer have clones, you have blades. You can see the blades above you and on your UI. And blades, since you can have more of them, will do more damage as your shatter. But they're projectiles, so they're a little bit more counterplayable, and you can see them coming, whereas shatters can sometimes be instant depending on your positioning. But because they are long range, you can also attack enemies without interacting with them as much. So there are trade-offs to the Virtuoso, but how you're going to be gaining those blades is mostly from the Psychic Riposte, which whenever you block or dodge an attack, you will gain 3 blades. And if you're at maximum blades, you won't gain the effects of getting the healing from your heal signet and the illusionary inspiration. So you always want to use your blades when you've got 4 or 5 of them by just shattering your F1, your F2, or your highest damaging abilities. Your F1 does the power damage, and the F2 is the Condi with confusion, bleeding, cripple, and torment. And the power one only does torment. So you mostly want to be landing the F2 for your damage, and the F1 is pretty decent damage as well, but since you have 2 of them, you want to use it as like the bait out for their dodges. Get their dodges out of the way with the F1, and then go in with the damage with the F2. The F3 is not amazing, it's just a daze, but if you really needed a daze, then it's there for you. And the F4 is Blade Turn Requiem, which is a channeled block, which will actually give out torment to nearby enemies with those blades because of the Maim the Disillusion trait. So it actually does a decent amount of damage, but you have to be on top of them that entire time. And you got to be careful because that constant pulsing will actually reveal you if you're in stealth. So if you're under pressure and you have to use Blade Turn Requiem to block, try to use your stealth first and then use the block once you come out so that it doesn't mess up your stealth. Your Scepter Torch set is mostly the aggressive set. You've got the auto attack, which gives you a clone or a blade every 3rd hit, which is pretty good damage as well because it's giving out torment and it has decent power modifiers. So this is what you'll be using if the enemy's not really counter pressuring you much and you're just waiting for them to react. And then you've got Illusionary Counter, which is a strong ability because it will block an attack and then evade afterwards if it successfully blocks, and then it will attack your current target. So if you get hit by someone that is not your current target, but you are targeting someone else, it will attack your current target. So you can sort of like riposte one target onto another, and it will do a decent amount of power damage, and it will do 5 torment for a really long duration. So extremely important skill to use intelligently. You don't want to spam this out and then not get the counter attack, because then you don't get the clone, you don't get the torment and damage, and if you're not blocking, you're not getting blades. So you'll actually get 4 blades from this because it creates a clone, which is a blade, and then it will give you Psychic Riposte. Really important skill to land. And then Confusing Images is a channeled beam, which does decent power, and it will give a confusion stack of 7, which is also very good damage. And then you got Prestige, which will blind nearby enemies. So when they jump on top of you, you want to use Prestige to blind them and get away, and then reposition so that you can land your Blade Songs. Phantasmal Mage, just throw that out there because that'll eventually do pressure or bait out a cooldown, and if they get hit by it, it's a really long burning. And in Staff, you pretty much just use this as a defensive weapon because it has a lot of movement with the 2 skill, which will give you a blade. And then the 3 gives a little bit of vulnerability, not that important. Chaos Armor is really important though because it will blind nearby enemies. So you want to use that kind of like similarly to the Torch 4. When enemies get near you, you blind them with the Chaos Armor. And then your Chaos Storm, you use that similarly as well. When enemies are on top of you, you put that on top of yourself, and it's very defensive because it'll chill, weaken, and give poison. And it will daze on the first strike, as well as give you pulsing, Aegis, Resolution, and Swiftness. So mostly you want to be using that as a defensive set, get away from your target, and then shatter them. While the build can be very spammy, you do need to have good timing to actually evade the right things. Otherwise, you're not going to get all of the synergy of your build. And another thing is, it's a pretty good build at surviving and doing damage, but if the enemy isn't attacking you, then you can't block or evade anything. You can obviously go over to like necro marks that have been left on the ground and dodge over those, but if someone's just running away and deciding not to fight you, you're going to struggle to finish people off. And you know, you've got the unblockable, you've got the blade generation, you've got all of your sustain is coming from just evading and blocking enemies. So if they're just running away from you, you're going to struggle to secure those kills. So that's kind of like the one issue with the build is it's designed to be constantly interacting with others and not really so good at bursting them from like one shot when they're not expecting it. But you can still do damage with your scepter abilities. Like the scepter auto attack is decent, will give you blade generation over time, and the scepter 3 is pretty good. But of course, if they just sit there and don't attack into the confusion, then they're not going to die to it either. So yeah, that's pretty much the idea of the build. It's very strong in 1v1s, decent at outnumbered, and that's pretty much it. So if you like this content, like the video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time.